to introduce Marty Caplan. As you can see, Marty is the director of the TM program for not only Western Pennsylvania, but also Eastern Ohio, Western New York, West Virginia, and Western Maryland. So he's a man that's all over the place. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Marty, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Hi.
It's nice that so many people are here. I want to start off with a question. Who has heard of Transcendental meditation? We've heard of it? Okay, so good. You have a lot of people. Has anybody ever learned to practice this meditation? You? Okay. And how about any meditation at all? Have you ever? Okay, good. That's really, I'm glad, because as we get into this, and what I want to do is show you what's unique about Transcendental meditation, and then if it's okay, I might call on you to tell me what your experience is with other meditations, what you like and what you don't like, things like that. And if you don't want to speak, that's fine. You shouldn't feel that I'm cornering you. And the other thing I want to say is that I have this PowerPoint presentation, and I have some information about what Transcendental meditation is and what it's not, and some research, some medical research, and psychological research has been found to identify a lot of the benefits of it. But if there's anything that is boring, just say it's boring and I'll move faster. Or if you have questions or you want to point something out and say, hey, that's not right, or I have a friend who told me so, just interrupt me. So you shouldn't feel like it's not a lecture. I'm not talking at you. Hopefully we can talk together. And so having said that, anybody have any questions or anything you want to start with? No? Yeah?
Is it possible for you to speak up a little more?
Yes, I can speak up a little more. And it's more slow.
I don't mean to interrupt your cadence, but thanks.
No, that's fine. That's good. Yes, good point. If you don't hear me or if I'm going too fast, let me know. Okay, good. So the first thing, I guess, what I want to start with is to let you know that I've been practicing this meditation and teaching this meditation for pretty close to 50 years now. So I'm pretty familiar with it. I've taught thousands and thousands of people to practice this. And it's very, very simple. It's not a hard meditation to learn and to practice. And it's not something that you have to work at before you get good at it. It's sort of, I would say, surprising when people first learn this. Within the first 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, you can tell there's something that's really unique about this. And I'm going to get into that. So let's see if I can figure out how to do this properly. That's moving along, yeah. Okay, so what is Transcendental meditation? That was signaled from the back there. She's going to turn some of these lights down so maybe you can see the screen a little bit better. Hopefully it won't mess up the video. So what is Transcendental meditation? A lot of people think, well, meditation, I want to learn to meditate because I want something to help reduce some anxiety or to relax, or I've heard that it's healthy to do this kind of a thing, it's healthy to meditate. And there's probably hundreds of different versions and types of meditations out there in the world. Transcendental meditation is, I would say, probably the oldest continuously taught meditation in the world. It comes originally from ancient India, and it was passed down from teacher to student, guru to disciple for generations. And I say guru in ancient India, it's not a religion. That's one thing about Transcendental meditation. It never was associated with any religion. It's not that there's any sort of doctrine or anything about it. It's just based on the fact that we as human beings, we think. All right, so everybody's thinking. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, a lot of anxiety, calm, whatever. The quality of the thought isn't the point. The point is we're human and we think. So it's based on that. So what is it? It's a way to relax. Yes, it is that. It's simple in that the mechanics of the doing of it is very natural and simple. It's not contrived. You don't have to try to get your mind to do something that it doesn't want to do. It's very natural in that sense. And you could say it's a natural way to develop creativity. And in fact, a lot of the psychological studies, the health studies, have found that it's not only relaxing and it's good for your body, it's good for your body, and it's good for your thinking, and it's good for your cognitive clarity, and it's good for, it improves the quality of your sleep because you're not walking around with as much tiredness and stress, which you're dragging into the bed at night normally. You know, maybe you can relate to some of this. So that's basically, at its core, it's a very simple technique for really good quality rest, and there's a lot of health benefits that come as a result of that. So, I already identified a few of the things. One, it's simple. And when I say it's simple, I don't mean that it's some beginner's simplistic type of watered down version of what real meditation is. Actually, if you understand how meditation, how the mind works, and how meditation should work and can work, you'll find that it's actually so natural and so in tune with the way that the mind already likes to think. And of course, we also like to let our minds rest. You know, there's almost like this intuitive desire. I wish I could just get some mental rest. You could almost say your mind already knows that it wants to go there. The key is, how do you get it, how do you let it go there? How do you let your mind rest so well? Well, it turns out there's a technique for that. And when I say it's natural, that means we're not guiding or focusing or controlling or manipulating the mind. Anybody that's practiced any kind of a meditation, even this, realizes this is not like these other practices. This is not like, well, one of the most popular ones these days is mindfulness, or there's concentration type or guided meditations. You know, people have these apps. You can get an app and it's maybe somebody sort of talks to you and sort of guides you into some attempting, and maybe some of them work a little bit to get the mind to rest and settle down. But what we find with transcendental meditation, that the mind likes to go there, it wants to go there, and it naturally, on its own, if you have the right technique, it just settles right in. It's actually, it's very nice and very surprising. In fact, it's so easy. We use the word effortless. That's one of the things, if you look at the literature, or maybe on our website, maybe if you've ever talked to somebody that has learned this, they say how simple it is and how effortless it is. And when I say effortless, it's like, it's really effortless. Literally, it's effortless. Do you ever notice that when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to remember to start thinking? You know, it's effortless. I just start thinking. Right? You know, you don't get halfway through your day and think, oh, gee, I forgot to turn it on. You know, I mean, it's like the blood flows through your veins. You know, you don't forget to make it do that. Well, there's this natural phenomenon that the mind does, and that is it dances all around all the time. So the mind is effortlessly thinking. And by the way, contained in that ability to be so active is an effortless capacity for it to just settle and rest. The problem is people haven't learned how to let the mind do that. That's what this is. So, okay, moving on. So, what is it? How do you do it? You just sit in a chair very comfortably. Now, I'm not going to be able to teach you how to do it right now. I have a little course for that I can teach you. But just so you know, sitting comfortably, you just sit and close your eyes. You meditate for maybe 15, 20 minutes each time. And the level of rest is really actually very, very profound, very, very deep level of rest. And I don't mean just sitting there daydreaming. It's a very specific technique. And it lets the mind run around when it wants to run around, and you know your mind likes to run, but it also lets your mind settle and rest. And you can do it anywhere. I've meditated in the car, I've meditated on airplanes, in the park. As long as you have a place that's comfortable to sit. And if you're not comfortable, by the way, and some meditations aren't like this, if you're not comfortable while you're sitting, maybe the chair is not so comfortable, you can just shift and move. There's no controlling, there's no discipline. That's a good word. There's no philosophy. It's not like I'm going to try to get you to believe in this. you could say it's like gravity. You don't need to believe in it, but if you set down your keys, chances are it's still going to be there in 5 minutes unless somebody comes along and takes it. But nature all around us has these, you could say, laws of nature that make things run and make things happen naturally. And one of the things is that the mind likes to move, as I said, and it also likes to rest. There's no change in lifestyle. I have that one of the punch points here. It's not like you have to believe in it. It's not as though you have to be a vegetarian and live an organic lifestyle or wear certain clothing or, you know, face a certain direction on the compass in order to get the result. It's so inherent to how we are built, you know, how we're created, that it just works. So, and I have a point on my chart that says great for skeptics. I've taught a lot of people that have come to me and said, I've tried meditation, it's not very easy for me, I'm not a meditator, you know, I don't think it works, I've seen some of the literature, I've read some of the research, I don't buy it, I don't get it, I don't believe it, it won't work, and I'm like, ooh, that's really pretty nice. So, I mean, literally, I've taught people that will sit there, it's like, it's not gonna work, and then, okay, I have to admit, it feels pretty nice. I can feel myself settling and resting really nicely, easily. So, I have on my chart here, it says, deep reduction in stress and anxiety. That's probably it in a nutshell. You know what happens is over the years, over time, maybe your sleep isn't so great, or you're trying to pack too much into your day, or the life stressors, it builds up and it builds up. The fatigue, the stress, it just starts to accumulate in a way that we're just simply not being able to rest deeply enough to let the body and the mind just balance and heal itself. You know, this is the basic core concept of the ancient idea of yoga. You know about the concept of yoga. Well, nowadays there's these yoga studios, but that's actually not what the word yoga comes from ancient India. It's the same tradition that Transcendental meditation comes from. Yoga, I'll show you in a few minutes what real yoga is. And real yoga is just simply the whole system, mind, body, emotions, your senses, literally vision and hearing and smelling and tasting, touching, you know. It's the system being able to settle and balance itself. That's actually the state of yoga, not the practice of trying to get there, but we have this innate ability to just sit in our own. That's the word yoga. Actually, by the way, and I'll come back to this in a minute, the word yoga, you know, it comes from the ancient language called Sanskrit. Have you ever heard of Sanskrit, the Sanskrit language? In ancient India, there were these, it was called the Vedic tradition, which basically is a tradition of knowledge of mind and body and health and environment. In this Vedic tradition, there were a lot of writings of this idea of yoga and balance and all of this, and it was all written in the Sanskrit language, which is not a living language anymore. It used to be actually people spoke it. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. Now it's just in texts, and you can read these if you know how to read it and translate it. And I'm going to get to some of this, but one of the things in the Vedic tradition, this word yoga is one of those Sanskrit words. Actually, the word guru, you know, that's a teacher. That's a Sanskrit word. Mantra, karma. We've heard these words. They've made their way into our language. They're from Sanskrit, in case you're interested. Okay, so what do people experience when they practice this? I already said it's easy, it's natural, all of that. Greatly reduced stress and anxiety. I don't need to read the chart to you, you can read it. But there's certainly this very simple, did I say simple? Yeah. It's a very natural, simple technique for very good quality of resting. So here's the thing, I have this little cartoon up here. Come on. People, this is so familiar. People say, yes, I want inner peace. Come on, like, I've got 10 minutes, I need it now. And it's a funny joke because it's almost like intuitively we say to ourselves, it's a joke, it's not real. Actually, it is real. She's nodding her head. One of my students, two of my students sitting up here in front here. It's actually surprising that this inner quietness, this inner calm, this inner peace, this inner happiness is not that elusive as people think. It's right there. The operative word there is inner. You know, how do you get there? We get the concept. People understand the meaning of what this is. And all the teachings and philosophies and religions and claims the different isms provide, we know the point of what's the goal. Intuitively, you know that you want some of that. How do you get there? So let's move on to that. Okay, when we talk about transcendental meditation, we use an analogy, and hopefully you can see the graphic. Here's the analogy. The analogy is our mind, the all of us, our mind is like an ocean. The waves of thoughts, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, that's surface level thinking. Like there's a wave, like I hear something in the back of there, some sound, I don't know what it is, but the point is, my sense of sound picks up on that. I see you all, right? I feel electric. We have this constant conscious input that's always running, but that's just the surface. Like an ocean, when you look, if you've ever been on a cruise or at the beach, right? You look at the whole of the ocean, you're actually only seeing the surface. All of that activity is surface. And I think it's probably 100 years now. Psychologists and philosophers have been saying we are only really utilizing maybe 5% of our mental potential, the surface. The rest is, I guess psychologists call it preconscious or subconscious or unconscious, you know, all these terms, to the depth, that subtle stuff that's deep inside. Well, transcendental meditation allows your mind to, on its own, by itself, without coaching or muscling our way into it, to just start to experience settling into quieter and quieter, deeper levels of the ocean of consciousness. And at the bottom, the ocean floor, the mind is still awake. You're still aware. You don't lose conscious awareness by this practice. You're not like out of it or in it. You know, you're not traveling into some la-la land or some weird altered conscious state. It's just you sitting there doing the meditation, but really resting, mentally, physically, emotionally. Very simple. This has been taught for thousands of years, right? But nobody ever did any modern day medical research on it until the late 1960s, early 1970s. That's about the time that I first heard about this. Actually, I'll tell you how I heard about it originally. Maybe you remember, I won't ask you your age, but I remember when the Beatles had heard about this and learned Transcendental Meditation. And they met the man who founded the TM, Transcendental Meditation Organization. He was a young man who had learned this technique from his teacher, his guru in India. That man's name was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And Maharishi had learned this technique. And actually, Maharishi had been trained as a physicist. And then he, after grad school, he went and became a student of a guru master. He grew up in India. You know, this is what you did. And if you wanted some spiritual training, you find a guru. So Maharishi had learned this, and he was just traveling the world teaching who wants to learn. The Beatles had met Maharishi at a lecture that, like this, that Maharishi was giving in London. They learned the meditation. It was all over the media, if you remember. You don't have to tell me how old you are, but I remember, and I became aware of this, and I didn't realize that you can actually go and learn this. I thought, oh, I'm not a Beatle, I'm not going to India, I'm just a kid. So it turned out a few years after that, I met somebody at a party, and this girl had just taken this course, which I now teach. And she was telling me about it, and I thought, that's really amazing. I actually misunderstood her. I thought she had gone to India and studied with Maharishi, and I thought, whoa, that's really impressive, that's pretty cool, because we were teenagers. She said, no, Maharishi trains teachers. And there's a man, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so he said, there's a man in Pittsburgh that trained with Maharishi himself, and he teaches this. So I thought, at the time I probably said, far out, hey, that's groovy, whatever, So, who is this guy? So she introduced me to him, and I met with him, and he actually was giving a talk just like this, and he didn't have the PowerPoint, we didn't have it back then, but they drew on the chalkboard this ocean waves and depth, and he explained how the mind has this ability to settle. And I thought, yeah, I want to learn this. I took the course. It's a very simple course. That's how I heard about it. So Maharishi had been talking for 15, 18 years, and there's still no medical research. He had been teaching thousands of people, traveling the world, and other people had studied with Maharishi, and they were teaching this. No medical research. And they had just started doing some research, and this was one of the original studies. The first published study. And what does it say? If you compare how deeply resting you become when you're doing transcendental meditation compared to sleep, when you go to sleep, it takes if you're a healthy sleeper, right? It will take you about 5 hours to get about this deep in sleep. And this is just, if you read the chart, all they're doing in this snapshot, and there are other parts to the study, but they're showing you that your breath rate goes down, the oxygen rate. It's an indication that you're resting. As simple as that. You're not trying to lower your breath rate. You're just sitting there doing the meditation, but this is what happens. But when you practice TM, twice as deep as deep sleep, but it happens within the first few minutes. This was a big deal. And in fact, the medical community, this was before the internet, of course, but the folks, primarily the lead researcher on this study, had studied with Maharishi, so he knew about transcendental meditation. He was a young guy, and he was working on his PhD, his doctorate PhD, in which he got, by the way, UCLA. But he published this study. And he was then invited to speak at medical conferences all over the world. Like, what is this? Because the concept had been known, but nobody knew in medical land that there was actually a simple way that anybody can sit down and get this kind of a rest. Because the health benefits of resting, I mean, doctors have known this for a long time. If you can rest, nature has these healing mechanisms that are built in for us. All you need to do is get some good, if you're sick, the doctor says, go to bed, get some rest, stop working so much. Recuperate, let the system heal and balance itself. This was a big deal. And it kicked off hundreds and hundreds of research studies since then. There's now over 600 published good quality research studies on the health benefits of TM, based on the fact that you're getting a very deep level of rest. One of the things they noticed, and I have a lot of medical stuff here, and tell me to move faster if you want me to. Whoops, I went too fast. One of the things we found is that the quality of sleep is really much better than sleep without that. It's not that you're meditating while you're sleeping, but when you're getting rid of a lot of deep fatigue for that little 20-minute session of meditation during the day, you just sit down, close your eyes, sit in a chair. What happens is you're not dragging all that exhaustion into bed with you. So sleep can work better. All the things that are supposed to happen when you're sleeping. You ever wake up and think, that was not restful at all? Well, that's because it's true. it's not working well. Why? Because you're overtired. It's an interesting study. And then there was a whole compilation of lots of studies comparing transcendental. Actually, it wasn't, they didn't set out to examine transcendental meditation. This was I don't know if you know about what a meta-analysis is. Anybody here know about science or research? No. That means they took 146 separate studies, and the studies were examining what's happening when you're practicing all these different meditation techniques, relaxation techniques. They compiled all the data, they ran it through supercomputers, they figured out what's really going on when you're practicing all these techniques and which ones work and what doesn't work to produce a reduction in anxiety. You know? What they found is transcendental meditation has this huge value, and different techniques have lesser and lesser and lesser. Like if you're doing some sort of a concentration technique, something where you're trying to guide or focus your mind, it actually statistically has been shown to increase anxiety. So I would say if you're doing that, you might want to reconsider. In fact, other relaxation, you know what that was? Napping. So if you're having anxiety, you can just nap regularly. Just put it into your afternoon. Take a nap for 15, 20 minutes, and it will help reduce anxiety. The data is in. You know PMR, you know progressive muscle relaxation? A lot of people know this. PMR. That's where you relax your shoulders, relax your back, progressively go through the muscle groups. It's actually not as good as napping. I mean, why is it not as good as napping? The more natural it is, the more effective it is. The more manipulation that you're doing, mental gyrations, diminishing returns. It's really an interesting concept. Transcendental meditation is natural, effortless. It goes almost by itself. I mean, it is a technique, but oops. When they did these research studies to measure the reduction of anxiety, what they find is, it works for everybody, but people that are more anxious, the benefit comes on faster. The differential between people that are moderately anxious, people that are real anxious, you see, you get, that's why I like to show that chart, because it makes that point. So I've taught a lot of people to say, I'm too anxious, I can't do this. It's like, oh yeah. Come on, watch this. I've actually had people in the first literally 5 minutes open their eyes. When I teach, you know, it's like you meditate a little bit, we talk a little bit, meditate a little bit, talk a little bit. Like, how's it going? That's, you know? And I've had people open their eyes after 4 minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and just smile. It's like, in fact, recently there was a man who said, I had no idea I could do this. There was another man that I taught a couple of years ago. He opened his eyes, and I was just sitting there waiting for him to do his practice, you know. And he opened his eyes and he said, how did you do that? And I said, I'm just sitting here waiting for you.
Marty, I just was going to comment about the fact that one of the things that I learned was that you don't have to practice TM for years and years and years before you get the benefit.
That's correct.
It happens the first time.
First time. Every time.
Yeah.
That's why I said earlier, it's like gravity, you know? It's not like if I drop the ball 10 times and 8 out of the 10, it doesn't work. It works. That's a good point. Thank you, Kate. Okay, I'm going to get a little technical here, and tell me to move on if you lose me, if you don't care. Modern science has gotten really pretty good about figuring out what's going on there in life and creation. What has been figured out, what science has discovered is that life, everything, physical matter, energy waves, everything in creation, plants, animals, people, everybody, planets, are built layer upon layer upon layer. If you examine it on the more surface level, like think of the ocean, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, that's just surface observable life, right? Material sciences, for example, laser technology, these are surface level technologies. But you go, the subtler you go, we now know about nuclear physics and atomic physics, atoms, molecules, subatomic particles, deeper and deeper and deeper, deeper, deeper. What Einstein, this was back in the 1930s, Einstein had this theory. As he was discovering deeper and deeper levels of energy and matter and understanding what was going on, he had this theory. This must be all coming from somewhere, right? Ultimately, science, and he tried to find it, but he died before he located it. But his theory was that everything that we see, and he called it theory of relativity, everything that's relative, that's here, not there, or up, not down, or made out of pieces of something else, probably comes from somewhere deep within, which he called some field, some aspect of life which is not diversified on the surface, but unified at the basis. What he called the unified field. Oh, he died. And later, years after that, physicists have actually located and validated his theories. That there's, at the basis of everything in manifestation is this unified field. In other words, like the ocean analogy, very diverse on the surface, lots of moving around, lots of vibration, physical matter, but the deeper you go, the subtler you go, the more energy, because atomic energy is a lot more powerful than surface level energy, right? I mean, if you split an atom, you can get a lot of light and energy to light a city. All you have to do is pick up an atom and tear it apart. Well, how do you do that? Well, they now figured out how to actually do that. So here's the point. There's a correlate to our mind. The mind has levels, most active, ocean analogy, here we go again, versus physical matter. They parallel one another. So what does this have to do with transcendental meditation? On the surface thinking level, I see something. I can see it, right? That's the senses. What I don't see is that it's made out of molecules. We know that it's there in atoms and subatomic. We know that it's there, but how do we know? Because scientists have studied it and said so, and we believe. You know, it's a leap of faith, but basically it has been proven in a laboratory that this is not just what we see, and the sound is not just what we hear, but there's subtler and quieter levels that are beyond our normal sensory level, right? So the theory is what you can articulate, what you can see is just the surface, but there's subtler layers also. So I'm going to jump this slide just because it gets a little wonky. What the practice of transcendental meditation is, basically, is we're experiencing quieter, less activated, more settled. The mind does this automatically. It just settles into quieter, more subtle, more nuanced, more refined levels of experience. It's not conceptual. I mean, you can conceive it. I have a little graphic here to show you the concept. But when you're actually experiencing it, what it's experiencing is quieter levels of mind, more restfulness of mind and body. And it's very rejuvenating. It's enjoyable. And at the basis of, you could say, paralleling this unified field is what the ancients, from in Sanskrit, in the ancient India, what they called samadhi. Maybe you've heard the word. I mean, a lot of people know this word. This equates with the state of yoga. We can actually, this is why Maharishi called it transcendental meditation. We're going beyond the surface value and going to quieter and deeper levels of mind. And we're experiencing that level of samadhi. In the ancient writings, it said, then the seer, that's the person doing it, is established in your own self. It's just yourself. by itself. You're not going anywhere, right? You're not becoming something other than your own experience of your own very deep quality of resting. There's a Sanskrit expression, yoga is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. Yoga is not yoga postures, like you see in the yoga studios. People do that. The tradition is, if you do that, maybe you can experience this. Well, I mean, I actually do yoga exercise postures, you know, because it's nice to get the kinks out, but it doesn't produce this. And there's this mental technique. We call it transcendental meditation. Meditation because it's a mental thing. Transcendental because you're not just stuck on the surface. You're actually settling in. Make sense? Cool? Groovy? There's another, don't get me started. There's another expression from this ancient literature. The peaceful, the blissful, the undivided is thought to be the fourth. And for centuries, nobody knew what the fourth meant. This was like in this ancient text. They called the Upanishads, or the Upanishad. It's a book, a series of books. If you can pronounce this, you get extra credit. But it says, that is the self. That is the self. That is to be known. Know thyself, you've heard this expression. What's the fourth? Turns out it's not the same as being awake, because your mind's at rest. It's not the same as dreaming, because that's all very fanciful. It's not the same as being sleeping, when you have no conscious awareness of anything. There's this fourth, completely natural state of consciousness that's been written about for centuries. But how do you get there? That's the inner. It's always been there. Everybody has it. Turns out there's this really simple technique to sit down and let your mind, and it's healthy to do that. So much so that they wrote about it and said, that's to be known. And I don't mean to get too into the Indian ancient culture, but this is, as I said, this has been taught for centuries, but it was only generally taught to the disciples of the guru masters. It wasn't taught to the general public until Maharishi, who was really actually a modern day guy, he had been trained as a physicist, and then he learned this, and he started traveling around, encouraging people to do research on it, medical modern day research, validate it, and teach people. So what the medical community started calling this deep level of samadhi, this deep level of restfulness, the self just at rest deep within, a wakeful hypometabolic physiological state, which basically means restful alertness. You're awake, you're aware, deeply restful. The dog barks while you're meditating. Where's the dog? You'll hear the dog bark. If you're itchy, you can scratch. You know, if you're curious, how long have I been sitting here meditating? You look at your watch. Oh, it's been 12 minutes. Okay, fine. You know, you're not out. You're not trying to hold or maintain a state of meditation. It's not like what most people think meditation should be. Another little cartoon. With transcendental meditation, we're not trying to get your mind to shut up. You know, it's not about, we're not doing anything on the level of, the conscious level of thinking. We're not trying to be unengaged or disconnected or observing or thinking. It's not about the surface content of what you think about. Those are just waves on the ocean. So it's a funny joke because actually when you experience the activity of thinking is fine. While you're meditating, you might be thinking about things. Of course, you have a mind. Your mind likes to move. It likes to think. You might be aware of something. You might not necessarily be aware of anything. You might just be sitting there meditating in that deep, quiet, resting phase. So it's funny because, thoughtless, it's the activity of thinking can actually rest, and you can still have wakefulness. See, the activity of the ocean waves is not the same as being awake. Right? You understand? There's a difference between being aware of something, having a wakefulness and awareness, which is different from thinking about something. Just too abstract? Let me give you an example. I'm going to go off the charts. You see the pen, right? No, you don't. It's a magic show. If you think about any experience that you have, every human, I see this pen. I hear a conversation. Every subjective experience, we use our senses to have these experiences. I see the pen. There's really, if you think about it, 3 parts to this. In the ancient Vedic Sanskrit writings, they talked all about this idea. There's 3 components to when you see this pen. There's me, I. There's the pen, which is different. There's me, there's the knower of that experience. I'm the one having the experience. There's the pen, the object of perception. And then there's this process of me having that relationship, that experiencing that process of that seeing the pen, or hearing the conversation, or smelling dinner being made, or feeling the temperature in the room. There's a central theme throughout, even though the objects of perception keep changing, the observer, the I, my individual self, is still the same person. It's the same thing, right? The same component to this processing. So there's a difference between experiencing yourself by itself and the experiencing external objects of perception. That's the activity of thinking versus just, I guess you could say, being. It's a bit of an abstraction, but it's really obvious when you think about it. By the way, you don't need to understand any of this to practice this. I've taught 3-year-old kids, literally, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. People highly educated, university professors, PhDs, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, literally, actually. And, yeah, I know. And I've taught people that didn't believe it, didn't understand it. It's not a cognitive, comprehensive thing. It's a mechanical, simple, natural technique for experiencing really good quality of rest. So, summary. It's simple, it's natural, it's effortless, and it's based on the fact that we have this innate ability to rest really profoundly. Hello, doggy. Whose dog? Is it yours?
Yeah.
What's your dog's name?
Kayla.
Kayla.
She is my service dog, though she was born with a therapy heart. And I take her places, I take her into nursing home and other things. And anywhere I go, people, she just,
She's sweet.
talk about calm. Thank you, thank you.
All right, I have a little bit more research in case anybody wants. Do you want me to just fly through it or no?
No, let's maybe see if people have questions.
Yeah, any questions? Anybody want to say or ask anything? Keep an eye on the time. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
When you do the meditation or do that, do you like listen to music
Nope.
or quiet
Nope.
or so how can you meditate when there's all this?
That's right.
That's not-
Because
You
other
know, that's like
because
distraction.
because the concept is, and this is not correct. Most meditations are about trying to block that out. Doesn't work. Have you ever done it? Have you tried?
No, I never did it.
It doesn't work. Has anybody tried that? some sort of a guided?
Yes.
Does it work?
No.
Is it easy?
No, it's not easy.
Yeah, I think it helps.
I
Yeah,
have
it
to have
helps,
quiet.
but
If I read a book, I have to have quiet. I can't, concentrate on that book. It's no TV,
That's right.
nothing going on.
Because comprehension really comes from a quiet place. And when you're trying to create the quiet
You're working.
externally, that's like saying, I want to create a state of the ocean where there's no waves. You can try it. Go to the beach
No, I-
and try to get to the ocean waves and stop. You ever played whack-a-mole? You cannot win that game. It's fun. You might have some little relative. The medical research does show that some of these techniques have some restfulness quality, but it's nowhere close to that ocean floor. It's tsunamis or ripples, but either case, the mind is still moving. The mind is still, and the more you're working at it, the more you're exerting effort, and that effort is creating more waves. Eventually, some people, after you practice these other techniques for a while, your mind becomes so fatigued, frankly, that it gives up, and then it can rest. And it's a byproduct of the overexertion of the mind rather than the doing of the technique itself. Really interesting research on this. This is why on that other chart it showed, mantra meditations. And by the way, we do use a mantra with transcendental meditation, but not in the way that these mantra meditations, you focus on the mantra and you concentrate on the mantra and you try to push out other thoughts and make sure you hang on to that mantra. I can explain the mantra in a minute, but it's not like that.
When I was going to learn TM, I thought meditation was you had to go in a quiet room.
Yeah.
Everything had to be perfectly quiet, and you just, your mind went away or whatever. And now I can meditate on an airplane, in a car, my husband driving with the radio on.
Yeah, if you're driving,
Really?
don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it when you're with your eyes closed.
Okay, I've had to tell her 4 times, stop.
So it really doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you do it.
You're not trying to block anything out. Your mind likes to rest. All you're doing is giving it the right angle and letting nature drive it. See, normally our mind moves horizontally. I'm thinking about this. That's what guided meditation is. If your mind tends towards things that are upsetting or worrying, guided meditation is, let's just redirect. Let's go this way. Let's swim to where the clouds and puppies and, the little kiddie pool. Don't go where the sharks are because that's upsetting. You might get eaten. So it's a redirect, but you're still on the surface. There's no, to use the technical term that we use, transcending happening. There's no reduction in mental activity. The result is, the difference between having a really good night's or 2 rest and being really overtired and you can't think straight. You don't feel well. Your emotions are running havoc. There's a big difference between being well rested and not. And I don't need to show you research charts for you to understand that. It's obvious. You ever pull an all-nighter, just stay up all night? How about 2 nights in a row? 3? It's like you get to the point where your body will pull you out of waking state into sleep. You cannot sustain lack of resting. And that's relative rest. Can you imagine this kind of rest on a regular basis? You sit down for 20 minutes. You don't need to practice this, as Kay said. You don't need to do this for weeks, months, years before you get, this is in 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the odd thing is, because it's so natural feeling and not contrived, it's surprising. People will sit there and say, I was thinking about, I hope this works, I hope this works, I hope this works, I hope this works. This is, I was like, ooh, this is pretty good. I can actually feel, after 5 minutes of meditation, I feel like I just had a good power nap. How is that possible? Because it's actually real, it really works.
Your brochure says you give courses. Where do you have them at?
My office is in Pittsburgh, in Squirrel Hill, but we were talking about me doing courses here.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, I can't do it.
No.
How many people do you have in a group when you're doing?
Here's how the course works. It really only takes 45 minutes, an hour to teach you how to do it. It doesn't even take that long, but I don't like people to feel rushed, so I say leave about 90 minutes, and I'll teach you how to do it. I always teach one person at a time, because frankly, you want my full attention, and I want your full attention. It's really simple, but why not? Let's do it well. So that's the first session. But the course is 4 sessions. Day 1, I make appointments throughout the day. And I just poke people through the day. So, 5, 6, 7, 3, however many people sign up for that course. And then we meet as a group, and I don't mean like group therapy. It's like small little groups. Yeah.
Some of us may need that.
That's tomorrow's lecture. And then we meet as a group. The first follow-up session, again, about 90 minutes. The second, so it's individual instruction, and then group, group, group. And the ideal is to do them 4 days in a row, which makes it a lot easier from here, because you can just come over. So, yeah. But you're really learning it in that first session. When you go home, you can do it. It works. This is what you experience.
So I have a question too.
Yeah.
So how you say doing this 20 minutes, but again, does it matter the time limit? Because I work with group therapy actually, and all my clients love the meditation, doing all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And it just makes me more anxious. And
Yeah.
recently I've been trying to go running every morning, and then I just sit on my porch, probably look like a freak to all the neighbors and the drive-bys, and you just sit on the porch with my eyes closed, and it's so peaceful.
Yeah.
And I just take 5 minutes of my day to do that, and it is actually like such a nice, relaxing
Right.
start. And it is better to do it in that noisy environment than it is with all my clients doing group therapy.
Yes, because you don't have the technique to get to here. What you're doing is sort of more or less resting on the surface. And the reason why it's frustrating or not comfortable when you're in the group, well, you may just not like the group. But those things that people are doing are really just concentration, something or other, or contemplation, something or other, or guided something or other. There's no transcending happening.
Your mind is still active when you're doing all those things.
Yes,
still
and your mind is still
focused.
active, but that's true, but when you're practicing TM, your mind is not, we're not trying to shut it down from being active anyway. It's just that your mind likes to go there, so it will go there. And oftentimes, see, this is the thing about Transcendental meditation. And this is Barb, another one of my students. She just said this to me before we started. One of the things that she found surprising is that every time you sit down to meditate, it's a different experience. Because there's no goal. We're not trying to quiet the mind. We're not trying to get there. The mind likes to think. The mind likes, we're curious about, I happen to be meditating, for example, and I'm thinking about that movie that I saw a couple of weeks ago, and it's just really sticking in my mind. It's just really interesting. I like that, or I like the graphics. Or some song. I've been meditating, and I've had a song sort of rolling in my head. We're not trying to whack-a-mole and get it to shut up. So your mind is free to think. The mind is free to move and think and notice this or that, but also it has this innate ability and desire, this natural attraction towards this deep level of resting. So you can be very subtle, very deeply resting and still having thoughts. It's really not like what you've done before.
And Marty, I wanted to add to that from earlier, what we were all talking about is, because I'm fairly new, I just did this at the end of April, and Marty would just keep saying, a thought's gonna come in, thoughts are gonna come in, and just think, oh, there's that thought. You just don't even pay it any attention, and that in itself Because that was an adjustment I had to make, you know, because you're told not to concentrate on the thoughts, but you're still thinking, these thoughts keep breaking through. And then when you get to that, just like, yeah, there's a thought, dog barking. And that in itself is so relaxing.
Yeah.
It's like you finally have freed your mind from having to attend to every little thing. So you will get thoughts, but you just, okay.
The fact
It
is,
doesn't matter.
The
It doesn't
fact
matter.
is, the mind is like an ocean, and that means it also has a surface. It also has conscious thinking. We're not trying to, it's not that we want no surface and only depth. We want to be able to utilize experience and take advantage of the full range of who we are. That's what the psychologists were saying for 100 years. The mind has a much broader range than people are used to experiencing. So it's not that we want this or this. We want this and this. We're expanding the experience. So yes, you will experience a profound level of rest that you probably never experienced before. I mean, nothing else produces this result. The thing with transcendental meditation is we are interested in results. The scientific research just validates that we're on the right track, that it works. The medical community has finally gotten over. We teach in schools, it's great for education. We find that the kids' grades go up and the graduation rates accelerate and the QPAs go way up and the interest in the topics goes up and anxiety and stress and PTSD and ADD, all of this just falls away when you're well rested. It's an amazing, beautiful tool. It's a tool for unfolding the full range of life, of who we are and what we can be. You had the question.
Yeah, the cost.
The cost. We're a nonprofit. When Maharishi first started teaching back in the 1950s, the middle 1950s, by the way, I had an opportunity when I trained with him. I learned to be a TM teacher. I graduated from my TM teacher training in the 1970s. He was still training people himself, personally. So I spent a couple of years with him training. I mean, I wasn't sitting next to him the whole time. He gave us work to do, and then, but I was trained by him. And when he started teaching and he started training people, what he did was he thought, well, he was a monk, and it was never a business. It was never meant to be a business. It was meant to be an educational thing. He learned it from his teacher. He wanted to offer it. So, but he was also a modern, practical guy, and he thought, well, how can we run an organization if we don't have some fee? So he started off by saying, make a donation, we'll create a nonprofit organization, and you want to come and learn, pick your price, whatever you want to do, whatever you can afford. And that's basically the model that we still use. We have this big global international organization, and we ask people to pay a fee for the course. It's a sliding scale that you pick the price. It's like, can you imagine going to buy a car? It's like, pick your price. And not only that, but once you've taken the course, you don't even have to pay for it all at once. We have no interest, no finance charges. You can spread the payments out over time if you want to. We're a nonprofit. We believe in trusting people. So we say, here's this payment chart. See where you fit as basing your economics on that chart. That's the level that we ask you to pay. If you can't, it's still too hard, or you need some, we have scholarships. How do you qualify for a scholarship? I need a scholarship. You're approved. There's no paperwork. I don't need to see your tax returns. Unless you want to show it to me, but that has nothing to do with TM. So the most expensive, and by the way, when you pay, you get access to me and the TM organization globally for the rest of your life as much as you want, no extra money. You're paying to learn, you're not paying for ongoing support and questions. That's the way Maharishi set it up from the beginning, and we still honor that. So the most expensive is, like if you're making, it's based on annual income on the honor basis. So if you're making more than, if your household has more than 200,000 a year, that's the most expensive, and up. That's the most expensive, that's $980. But it comes down, 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 down. There's an automatic student rate, which is less than half of that. And, you just pick what level you are, 750, 540, all the way down. And even with that, I teach people all the time that are in the lowest price category and they still need scholarship. And that's okay. No shame in it. If you want to learn, you'll learn. I'll find a way. I have not a big bucket of money, but I have some money. I have a cup of money of some scholarship funds. Sometimes people will learn and they say, you know what, this is really great. I have an extra $100. I'm going to donate it, put it in the bucket for somebody that might need it. So pay it forward, that kind of idea. So I don't know what your income is. I don't know what category you would fit into.
I'm retired.
So I've taught people that retired that were multimillionaires. So
Not me.
there was a man recently who said, "I'm retired. I'm only making $400,000 a year now off of my investments." So he paid full price.
Yeah.
So you get the point. I mean, I taught a man who was literally homeless. He said, "I want to pay something. I don't feel right paying nothing." He said, "I'll call you back when I put some money together." And it was 3 months later, and he had raised $50, and I taught him. So it's not about the money. Sometimes you might meet somebody who says, "Oh, they charge money for this meditation. I can get an app for free or $5. They don't work. It's not, for us, it's not about money. It's not a business. It's an educational organization, registered with the IRS, we're legitimate, and we want people to learn.
So if you are hesitant, it's worth probably your while to talk to Marty directly and decide where you might fall in that scale.
And we have a money-back guarantee. It's a national policy. If you learn, you take the course, you pays your money, and you learn the technique, and it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back.
Why wouldn't it work?
Exactly. That's why it's a great policy.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. She's a plant, by the way. Yes.
So you said would be part of a worldwide community of people.
It's an organization that teaches TM, yeah.
So like, would I then be able to meet like Russell Brand?
I actually know Russell Brand, yes. I know he's a very big advocate for TM.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, Russell, you know Russell Brand, the comedian actor?
Yeah.
He's a
Yes.
British actor, sort of wild, crazy guy. Not like Steve Martin, his own version of that. But yeah, he actually was doing, I had the opportunity to be involved in one of the big programs teaching TM in public schools. It was in San Francisco. I actually had some slides from there, but I was going to show you. But the point is, I was in San Francisco teaching in the public school, Transcendental Meditation, middle school, and Russell came and did a big fundraising event for the TM organization to raise more money for more schools in San Francisco. So I got to know him.
Nice.
There at that
Nice.
time. Yeah.
I follow him on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about TM all the time.
Yeah.
He
Yes.
really loves it. You know, there are a lot of celebrities that practice this, and, you know, I can name drop, but that's not the point. A lot of people think, oh, well, Russell Brand or somebody more, less wacky. Jerry Seinfeld, for example, Tom Hanks. These guys are, you know, they're big deal actors. They can buy or do anything they want. Word is out, but this is the one that works. This is actually valuable. We're a legitimate organization. It's not odd. It's easy to learn. It's completely portable. You know, you learn it, it's yours. You've got it. You own it. And I'm available, and other TM teachers around the country are available in case you want a tune-up. And there's no charge for that.
So you're thinking of, you did say you're thinking about teaching it here.
Yeah, we were talking about setting
Yeah,
up a
we're
course
gonna
here.
try to make arrangements so that we can have Marty come up and do classes here. And what I want you to do before you leave, if you're interested in that, and you'd like a phone call when we get that set up, I just need you to put your phone numbers on this sheet of paper for me if you're interested. It's not a commitment, you know, and it, you know, would depend on, how would they go about talking to you about their,
On
where
the
they would
back
fall into the
of, on the
price
back of
scale?
the paper is my contact, my email address and my telephone number. That's my cell phone, right here. So if you text that number right now, it'll, right there.
As long as Marty's willing to come to us, and he's
Yeah.
indicated he is, I will make this happen here if there are people who are interested in doing it.
Or if you want to talk to me privately and, you know how to find me. Yeah. It's really a very interesting, that's a curious thing. You know, we have this innate ability. I think intuitively people know there's more than what I'm experiencing. You know, it's like you have this sense that I can be more. I am more than what I'm,
And what's on the surface.
what's on the surface, what I'm experiencing. You ever have, I don't know if you have children, this is really classic with kids. That young man who's kind of out of the room, but everybody knows this. You ever with kids or somebody, a friend or a family member or a coworker or whatever, it's like you hit your limit with them. It's like you run out of patience. The truth is, we don't run out of thinking. That energy, that creativity, that intelligence that's really at our core is a limitless ocean of consciousness. It's the source of what every thought, every emotion, every experience, that's where it originates, from within. If you're ever feeling that you're hitting your limit, cognitively, you ever get intellectually tired? It's like, oh, why? The mind gets tired, the body gets tired. It gets cut off from that source of energy that's deep within us. It's really not necessary to run low on your gas tank. There's a technique that just settle, rest, rejuvenate, and grow. That's a technique that actually works.
Just to share a little bit, I learned TM in February 2019, and my normal practice is I wake up, I have a morning meditation chair. I don't have to go there, but I go there 20 minutes, and then probably around 4 o'clock, my low energy point of the day, I sit down for another 20 minutes, and I'm ready to go again for the night. So that I consider them like my bookends for the day.
We recommend our experiences, this is a part of your question. You said people will meditate for longer and longer. You don't need much of this.
Yeah, 'cause like it only takes me, like I said,
Yeah.
5 minutes, and it's a very
Mhm.
full set mindset.
And imagine if you were actually getting this deep. And some people say, oh, well, I've tried meditation and I get really fidgety. That's because you're not doing it. Right.
I've always had that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a fidgety person, it just,
The fidgetiness is because go back to the other chart. People become restless. I mean, literally, the ocean's surface is restless. Literally. There's no resting on the surface. So if you're living your life only up there, of course it feels restless. If you're experiencing restfulness, you're living restfully. That's all right.
Restfully.
Restfully. We have depth. It doesn't need to be elusive and unattainable. It's right there.
From teaching people of all ages, yeah, seniors, one thing we always have in our mind is our mind. You know, is it going? Do you find this helping to?
There's really interesting research on, yes is the answer to your question. There's research on even Alzheimer's. There's a big Alzheimer's long-term study it's almost about ready to be published. I think it was done in UCLA or Stanford, somewhere out on the West Coast. And what they found is that people practicing TM have much less severity of Alzheimer's and much less occurrence of the acceleration of Alzheimer's. It's healthy for the mind, the brain, the physical system, the senses, the emotions. It's healthy to rest.
Okay.
This is the core research. This is the first research study. Everything else comes from that. Just imagine if you were doing this on a regular basis. Ever wake up and think, that was a good night's sleep? Well, that's the norm. That's how it should be.
With that with the question I just asked about Alzheimer's, dementias, if you do it on a regular basis, is that how it would be more beneficial than doing it, every other week or something?
Yeah. Maybe it's not a good analogy, but it's like when you go to the dentist, should I brush my teeth once every couple of months? Or should I do it on a regular basis?
I can't stand it if I don't do it.
That's exactly what
You
happens.
get used to being well rested. So, are the benefits cumulative? Yeah, because it's built up cumulatively.
Okay.
Is that the right word?
Yeah, just
We-
piled on top instead of,
Yeah, so it's taken some years to build up, and it actually fades away pretty quickly. You can start to notice results from day one. And you do become used to being well rested. No question about it. You know that afternoon slump that Kay was talking about?
yeah. I know it well.
I haven't experienced that in decades.
Wow. I had to actually stop working daylight shifts
Yeah,
from 7 to 3:30 because I would be falling asleep
right.
on the drive home.
You're just tired. I don't mean to minimize it. It's overtired.
Yeah.
There were studies showing that people practicing this meditation in time, they were actually reversing the aging process. There's a direct, I have a chart, I've got a lot of charts, I didn't know how deep we'd get tonight, but it shows that the longer you're meditating, the more physiologically youthful the body is. The brain function, the creativity. A lot of people I teach that are creative types, and they say, I've sort of lost my creative edge. It's like, oh, it comes back. By the way, I want to make something clear here. I'm not trying to sell you on it. We're not a sales organization. We're an educational organization. Sometimes I'll talk to somebody and 10 years, literally 10 years later, they'll come back. Remember I talked to you back in, I'm ready to learn now. It's like, okay, let's do it. And then people say, I don't know why I didn't do this before. It's like, And I've had people say, oh, I didn't have the money. Well, I'm telling you up front, don't worry about that. We'll find a way. You want to learn, I'll teach you.
And Marty, one thing you told us that I thought was very interesting was that you get benefits no matter your age when you start. Because I could easily think, geez, I'm in my 60s, I should have been doing this all along. Well, it doesn't matter, because you get the benefits right away when you start.
The oldest person I ever taught was 97.
Wow.
A lady in Meadville. And her son, who was 75, had learned this. And he called her, he said, Mom, you gotta learn this Transcendental meditation. This lady was amazing. She was a poet, she was a really creative lady. And she said to me, Marty, I need to tell you, this is life-changing. And then she paused and said, and I know. Yeah. And then she said, am I the oldest person you've ever taught? I said, yes, you are. High five.
for her.
Did I win? Ellie, you win, Ellie.
Where do you teach at in Squirrel Hill?
I have an office that's on Murray Avenue.
Oh, okay.
How far is that from here?
Uh,
How far driving wise?
Depends on the
45
traffic,
minutes.
45 minutes, yeah,
Okay.
unless you drive too
I used
fast.
to live there, so.
Yeah,
So I had talked to you earlier about, I learned that it doesn't have to be total quiet. So we could do this any day of the week, even if the library were open, if we use the reading rooms.
yeah,
And, I mean, we could keep the library to a moderate.
there's no noise. I mean, when we do the group, if the group's too big to fit in the little room, we'll just find a corner and we'll do it. But we can fit, what, 10 people in there?
Probably with a few folding chairs,
Yeah. The individual instruction, let's see, if it's about a 90-minute instruction, I don't want people to feel rushed through the process. So let's say it's 90 minutes, so I could teach 7, 8, 9 people on a given day, because for me, it's one at a time through the day. So maybe the group would be 7 or 8 or 9 people.
What would be the hours?
We can pick whatever, we'll just ask who wants when, and we'll figure it out.
Most likely, because of, everybody's schedule is different, it would be nice if we could have some, like maybe daytime hours and then some evening hours
Yeah.
for people to work.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll try to
Well,
get.
my daughter, I know my daughter needs this, because she's a nurse.
Yeah.
She's in a high-stress
yep,
Yeah.
job,
yep.
and,
I teach a lot of medical people.
she works like 5:30. So, and she works in Butler, so takes her probably
At
about,
Butler Hospitals,
she works at Butler VA.
the
She
VA.
works at- Yes.
You know, we're working on a program for the Butler VA program. I have one of my students who's a veteran. Oh man, this is so good for PTSD and veterans. Oh, it's amazing. I could tell you some really amazing stories. But one of my students lives in Butler. He is very involved in the VA, and just today we were emailing back and forth to get a program at the VA Administrative Hospital in Butler.
Wow.
But yeah, I bet.
You
That could
probably have
be-
a
that
lot
could
of
be-
students, yeah, you probably have a lot of
And it could
people.
take months to set that up.
Yeah, people,
So
yeah.
if she wants to learn, she'll figure it out.
I'll have to talk
Does she
to-
live there or here?
No, she lives, well, she lives near Fort City.
Yeah.
So, where
Okay.
she lives. But she's always stressed, I mean.
Yeah,
Stressed to the max.
very high level
Yes.
of,
Especially with the veterans, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did for a living, so.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah.
It's-
I've taught a lot of veterans. I mean, I've taught vets that were like special forces have seen really bad stuff. And I've seen them just melt. There was a guy I taught from Vietnam, suffered from PTSD for 45 years, 50 years. And he literally started crying the first day. He said, I cannot believe that I could have done this 40, 50 years ago. And he was telling all of his friends. You know what it is? Stress builds up. That's it. That's the bottom line. Stress, tired, exhaustion, it builds up. And we carry it in the body. We carry it in our bones. And it's not necessary to carry it. So. Thank you for coming. I'll stay if you have questions you want to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you,
Please,
yeah.
before you